Almost everybody has heard the old saying, "You can't tell a book by its cover." Meaning, of course, you can't know if it's any good or not until you start to read it. The same can be said about a book's title. But there are thousands of books out there, always clamoring for our attention, as well as a blizzard of other reading matter in print and online. So a catchy title and a striking cover can only help in trying to get readers to pick up a new book and delve inside, to judge if it's worth their time. Here's a case study of how much thought and effort went into the packaging of one new novel vying for your consideration. The process has to begin with the title and what the author meant to convey by it, so the cover designer can try to project graphically what the book is about, its subject, mood, and tone. This particular novel is titled Hamlet's Children, which is an attention grabber because, as everybody knows, everybody at least who didn't fall asleep when their high school English class took up Shakespeare, Hamlet didn't have any children. The troubled young prince of Denmark died in Act 5, Scene 2 of the play. Here's a photo of the great British actor Sir Laurence Olivier in the title role of the best-known film version of the Bard's masterpiece. But if Hamlet was literally childless, what does author Richard Kluger's title refer to? Hamlet's Children tells the coming-of-age story of Terry Sayre, an American teenager who, due to family misfortune, can avoid foster care custody only by taking asylum abroad with his maternal grandparents, nearly total strangers to him, living in far-off Denmark. The year is 1939, when Terry begins his struggle to accustom himself to his newfound relatives and their countrymen with odd customs and an unpronounceable language. Within months, though, Hitler's vast army seizes Denmark, Germany's peace-loving little neighbor, and occupied it for 5 years as World War II rages elsewhere in Europe. Young Terry is marooned there for the whole time. The novel narrates, through his eyes, ears, and feelings, what life was like for the Danish people under Nazi captivity, and how they tried to endure it with honor, even while having to feed their conquerors' troops and service their weapons at gunpoint. Author Kluger chose to use Hamlet's name in his title because he's the most famous Danish character in literature and encountered grave troubles in the royal palace at a time when, as Hamlet's buddy Horatio put it, there's something rotten in the state of Denmark. By adding children to the title, the author doesn't mean the word literally, but to draw an historical parallel to 500 years later, when Hamlet's kin suffered their darkest days in captivity. So how does the cover designer, his name is Jon Krop, begin to visualize this tale of storm and strife? Well, he could have started with this map of Denmark, and then, to show its captive state, superimpose the swastika symbol of the brutal Nazi regime. But there were two basic problems with this imagery. First, the map. Denmark doesn't have a well-recognized or interesting geographical shape. It's too cluttered to serve as easy eye candy. Second, the author was dead set against glamorizing the toxic swastika by placing it smack dab in the middle of the cover, signifying the triumph of malevolent tyranny. Instead, the cover needed to project the Danes' anguish over their downtrodden condition. So Jon turned to other imagery. The designer's first try at the cover introduced menacing barbed wire as the dominant image against a bloody red background, both suggesting pain for any captive attempting escape, and entangling the title in an understated type style. It was a graphically effective look, but the editorial and marketing team overseeing the publication of the book feared that the events in the novel would be mistaken for taking place inside an actual prison camp, instead of symbolizing a whole society shackled figuratively, but not in actual lockdown. So the cover designer came up with a more subtle but even gloomier image, with the shadow of angled prison bars falling over a Danish flag. But the publishing group felt the scene was just too grim and off-putting, and likely to discourage readers, and not invite them in. Well, a Danish postage stamp would certainly tell readers where the story takes place. But Denmark doesn't really have any especially famous landmarks to illustrate on its stamps, and portraits of its monarchs wouldn't be recognizable outside the country. Besides, all their kings have been named Frederick or Christian for hundreds of years. John went back to the drawing board and came up with Gestapo boot prints stomping on a Danish flag. Not bad. But the punishing boot steps were too subtle, too hard to instantly recognize, and the cross on the Danish flag looked more like a traditional crucifix than the sideways Nordic cross used with differing colors on the flags of all Scandinavian countries. By now, it was apparent that the Danish flag itself had to be the central image, because that's what flags do best. They emblemize their nations. The Danish flag is a bright crimson with its white, distinctly Nordic cross extending to all four edges, striking in its simplicity. True, most Americans wouldn't recognize it as the Danish flag, but Danish Prince Hamlet's name in the title would tell literate readers what nation the flag has long flown over. But how best to present the flag? The designer's first stab was to go with a modern, almost childlike rendering, with the flag at half-mast to signal a nation in mourning, and the flagpole resembling a match, as if it might be struck any moment to ignite an uprising by the tormented Danes. The title was in understated white lettering against a midnight black background. But it was too sterile and static to suit the publisher's team, so John made the flag wave. That was better, but it still didn't command a salute or much respect, or hint that the nation was at war with a savage enemy. So, the designer made several more changes. He ran the flag to the top of a pole, which was actually just a long extension of the left vertical side of the initial letter H in Hamlet, and made the flag droop sadly. It was too small, though, and drooped too much to be recognizable. Then John tried snapping the flagpole in half and letting the flag crumple as it reached the ground. But the total effect was like a broken toy and projected an image of abject defeat, a real downer. By now, the publishers were growing uneasy. The cover needed emotion to bring it to life. John went to work to give the flag personality. A Google image search yielded a realistic, valiantly fluttering Danish flag, but it also needed to look distressed, as if it was surviving in the midst of a fierce battle. So I gave the flag a worn and frayed look, the designer recalls, by using a graphics tablet and pen with some Photoshop filters to show rips and tears and the whole right side in tatters, wounded like Denmark, but still defiantly waving. He also introduced a more realistic metal flagpole, and again lowered the ensign to half-mast. Now that was more like it, a gutsy-looking battle flag with inspiring presence. The white title in modern, all-lowercase lettering popped nicely against the still pitch-black background. But it was too small to convey the idea that an epic struggle was underway to save Denmark's soul. To make the whole scene more terrifying, Jon then replaced the black background with a smoky, explosively yellowish sky, so the flag looked like Old Glory in the words of the Star-Spangled Banner, reflecting the rocket's red glare amid the bombs bursting in air. And now he punched up the title to larger, stout italics, giving it the appearance of being in motion, like the enlarged flag below. Now the cover had pow, or so most of the publishing team felt. But two new objections surfaced. The first was that the title in thick italic letters somehow made the book seem less than serious, more like a frothy romance novel, especially when set above the brilliantly bright colors filling the bottom two-thirds of the cover. One cranky member of the publishing team even said the design made it look, unfortunately, like a candy box cover. So Jon set the title in a more classic typeface and Roman style, making the book seem more serious and literary. But one marketing expert found a final fatal flaw. The fiery, explosive background nearly enveloping the flag suggested strongly that the book is a war novel full of gory, deadly combat, a subject known to turn off female readers who make up the lion's share of the novel-buying public. In fact, Hamlet's Children has no battle scenes, and actual gunfire on only a few of its 463 pages. So the fire and brimstone had to go. But how to replace it? Jon created a background with a wholly different mood to set the brilliant flag against. He chose a soft blue-gray, as if the smoke of battle were drifting away, and the promise of a new peaceful day was about to dawn. Finally, he set the title in elegant white Baskerville type that asserted, but did not shout at the reader, that this is a gripping story you need to read. Voila! The publishers, Scarlet Tanager Books, hope you like it as much as they do. Happy reading, and have a Danish with your coffee while doing so.